Hello everyone, I'm going to have a series of tips and pieces of advice for those who just started the game or for those who just returned as I did. So first of all, I'm going to tell you about the hotbars. So you see these hotbars with the actions, with the sets of gear, with the mounts, etc. So here, for example, I have my companion controls so that I can apply it for the task that I'm doing right now. Okay, so how do you get here? Well, usually you could see one or two of these hotbars with the actions being added after you unlock them. So of course we start with the enabling of these hotbars. So you go to system menu. From here you go to HUD layout, and here you could choose whichever hotbar you want to work with. So we have 10 hotbars, then we have pet hotbar and cross hotbar. Since I am not using the gamepad, I'm not going to choose this one. And let's start with the first one. So here you can see it highlighted orange, and you could choose it from here or by clicking on it. So for example, now I clicked on the hotbar 3 and now it's active for changes. So changes could be applied from these UI element settings. So it's a gear-like button and you press on it, and from here you could choose the size, which is by default 100%, but you could change it to whichever percentage you want. So for the 3 hotbars that I'm using for actions, I use 100. Then you could choose the transparency, also is very handy if you like the view of the scenery, etc. Also you can make it active or turn it off. Then you could choose the layout. So for example, the default one is 12 by 1, so 12 cells in one row. You could also have 6 columns in 2 rows, 4 columns in 3 rows, etc. So here you can see that I have hotbars, for example 5. By the way, after you chose the appropriate settings, you press on save and then choose another one to work with. So for example, here I have hotbar 6 and it is 3 columns by 4 rows. My hotbar 9 is 1 column, 12 rows. If you think that this view is overwhelming for you, so you could choose hotbars only, and here you would be working with hotbars only. For different characters, for different classes, you might also have different layouts. So for example, my layout 1 looks like this, but if you click on these tabs, they will show you the default settings for the bars and the layout. Okay, so you could default everything or default just the hotbar or element that you're working with. I'm not going to do that right now. And to quit, you just press on this cross here and you're back to your usual window. Of course, to understand how everything works here in the HUD layout, just play with the setup, play with the sizes, etc. and you will get familiar with that and you will be able to change everything to your need. Okay, so go back to settings, the system settings, and from here choose the character configuration. So by default the hotkey is K. So press on these character configurations and from here go to the hotbar settings. So here you will be able to customize them further. So we start with the first section here. So we have the recast time, and if you want to see how it looks, so let's go to BLM and use one of the abilities that has the recast time. Okay, and here on these action button, you can see the countdown of your recast, and it's quite handy when you use these of GCD, and you could track it to get familiar with. Okay, so then you go hiding the unassigned slots. I like it very much because I don't like when I see these cells visible, so I will show you how it looks. So here, for example, I have the 5th bar, and on the 2nd bar I have also 2 unassigned slots, and it just bugs me, so I press on hiding it. Okay, so you could also choose the numbers of the hotbars, and sometimes it might be also handy, but for me it's not crucial. Also the cycling, so sometimes in the fight you might press on that and lose the hotbar that you need, so I also uncheck it. You might want to include the hotbar when you cycle, but if you don't use the cycling, then there is no point to choose this one. Okay, so drag and drop repositioning, why it's cool. So let's say I want to change the location of the sharp cast, so I just drag and drop it somewhere where I want it. So this is quite handy. Also, to customize your hotbar, you can right click on it and remove the unneeded stuff. So now I removed the marker. Okay, so to perform these changes on your hotbars, you always need to unlock them, and it is a general rule that you lock them after you've done with the changes. Otherwise, again, in the battle, instead of pressing on one of the actions, you can accidentally drag and drop it from your hotbar. So what happens when you drop it from your hotbar? It disappears. Next, this part, it is made in the form of table, the same one that we've seen in the HUD layout, and you could access it from there too. So again, my hotbar 1 to 3, they are in the shape of 12 columns in one row, while my hotbar 5 and 6 are in the shape of 3 columns by 4 rows. So you could choose them from here. Next section is about the pet hotbar. So I chose it to be available when I use my pet. So let's say I'm using one of the daily beast tribes, and you want to perform some kind of actions on the designated areas. So it is quite handy to use the first hotbar as your pet or mount hotbar, because you just run to the place that you need and then use it by pressing 1. So this is much easier to do than reaching with your mouse and clicking here, but the action is the same. We go back to character configuration, and actually we are done with the first display part, so we go to sharing. So what is the sharing? If you want to make your hotbars shared between your classes, you choose the ones that you want to share. So for example, when I change my classes, everything stays the same, but the first, second and third hotbars, they are class specific. So in this case you choose the ones that will not be shared between the classes, while the checked ones will be constant for all of them. So cross hotbar is for your game part. Then you might go to custom part, and in here you will be choosing the appropriate expansions of your controls on your game paths. What else you should know about the hotbars is that you could assign the keys or shortcuts specific for these hotbars. So you go to keybind, again the system, and here you choose the keybind. And from this menu you choose the hotbar. And here you of course could choose whichever keys on your keyboard are the most appropriate for performing the action. Okay, so for example, for the hotbar one, which is below here, I should press my numpads, so 1, 2, equal, and minus. So these are the first row or the first hotbar. Then I add control to perform the actions in the second row or second hotbar. Finally, I set up the shortcuts for hotbar 3 through the Alt key. So by pressing Alt key, I'm performing the action. So for example, the food graze, I press Alt and 7 together. Okay, so the only thing here, of course you are going to choose the key that is appropriate for you, but if you choose the Alt, you should know that when you move, so let's say you move and press Alt, your character stops. So be aware of that, because sometimes it might lead to some bad consequences. Okay, what else? For example, here on these hotbars, I also assigned the keys for my mount here, for sprint, for the chocobo companion, and for specific minions that I like right now. You could also assign anything on your hotbars. So for example, here I have the Alt-G combination for my throne. You just go to the appropriate hotbar, for example hotbar slot 4, and you count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So hotbar 6 slot 4 is my throne, and when I press Alt-G, I'm executing it, and as you see, I don't need to reach with the mouse. Okay, so for my hotbars 10, 9 and 8, we go down, or actually it's 7s. Okay, so for the sprint, I have Alt-E, and by pressing Alt-E, I execute the sprint. Alt-W is for my 11th position, which is the minion here, etc, etc. While we are here in the keybind, it is good to know that you could also change the confirm action. So usually it's set to 0 on the numpad, and because I played a lot the Counter-Strike, it's easy for me to use E. And I think that most of the people use WASD for movement, so E should be quite familiar and comfortable for use as the confirm action. And for example, for targeting, I'm using the Q here. Q to choose or target the nearest enemy. It's also quite handy, especially when you're doing the tanking. Also, you could go to the shortcuts menu and change the parts that you're going to use a lot and not to use your mouse to apply them. Here, for example, I have set the friend list because I'm using it a lot too, and the trust. So for trust, I'm using Ctrl+T, and you can see it. So by pressing it, I got the menu of my trust, instead of going to duty, finding trust, etc. So this is the end of the first tip, and I will see you in the next video.